His wife said, "I regret not marrying my ex. He's everything you're not." What he did next shocked her. "I regret not marrying my ex. He's everything you're not. I should have listened to my mother. I never should have married beneath my standards." Those were the venom-laced words Evelyn Collins spat at her carpenter husband across a dimly lit Charlotte diner, her wedding ring glinting as if mocking the vows they once made. What she didn't know was that the quiet man sitting across from her had already set in motion the most ruthless 24-hour revenge a betrayed husband had ever unleashed. What followed will make you question everything you think you know about love, betrayal, marriage, and the cost of underestimating the simple people in your life. Viewers, if someone you loved spat those words at you, would you walk away quietly or destroy them completely? Tell me in the comments. The rain drummed against the windows of Rosewood Diner on South Boulevard, creating a rhythm that matched the tension building between Andrew and Evelyn Collins. It was a Thursday evening in October, the kind of night when Charlotte's autumn air carried promises of change that neither of them could have anticipated. Andrew Collins sat across from his wife of 3 years, his calloused hands wrapped around a lukewarm cup of coffee. At 32, he was the kind of man who built things that lasted: custom furniture, kitchen cabinets, entire home renovations across Charlotte's growing suburbs. His reputation for quality craftsmanship had earned him steady work, but it also meant long hours and dirt under his fingernails that never quite scrubbed clean. They had driven to the restaurant in Andrew's pickup truck, the same vehicle that carried his tools and dreams of building their future together. The drive had been tense, filled with Evelyn's complaints about their modest lifestyle and Andrew's patient attempts to explain their financial reality. Evelyn picked at her salad, her manicured nails clicking impatiently against the ceramic bowl. She was 29, beautiful in that polished way that came from knowing exactly how to present herself. Her auburn hair fell in perfect waves, and her makeup remained flawless despite the humid Carolina evening. She worked as a marketing coordinator for a downtown firm, surrounded by colleagues who dressed in designer suits and drove luxury cars. "I need money for a girls' trip," she announced, not looking up from her barely touched meal. "Monica's planning something special for her birthday, and I can't be the only one who can't afford it." "Evelyn, we talked about this. Money's tight right now. I'm still paying off your car loan, and we've got the mortgage." "Oh, here we go again," she interrupted, finally looking up with eyes that burned with frustration. "Always the same excuses. Always about money. Do you know what Monica's husband just bought her? A weekend trip to the Bahamas, just because she wanted it. Jennifer's getting that kitchen renovation she wanted. And what do I get? A husband who comes home covered in sawdust, talking about mortgage payments and budgets." The comparison stung, but Andrew kept his voice steady. "We're not Monica and David. We live within our means. That's how we keep this house, how we stay trapped in mediocrity," Evelyn snapped, her voice rising with each word, filling their booth with venomous resentment that had been building for months. "I'm 29 years old, Andrew. My friends are living their best lives while I'm stuck here watching you count pennies." Andrew felt something shift inside him. This wasn't about a vacation. This was about respect, about the foundation of their marriage crumbling under the weight of her endless dissatisfaction. He'd worked 60-hour weeks to give her the life she wanted. He'd postponed his own dreams to pay for her desires. And still it wasn't enough. "Evelyn, I work my tail off for this family. Every custom piece I build, every house project I take on, it's all for us. For our future." But she was beyond reason now, looking more furious. "Your future, you mean? Your little carpentry dreams. Meanwhile, I'm wasting the best years of my life." The words hung in the air like poison. Andrew was still, watching his wife transform into someone he barely recognized. This was the woman who'd promised to support his dreams, who'd said she admired his work ethic and craftsmanship. Now she spoke of his passion like it was a burden. "I should have listened to my mother," Evelyn continued, her voice growing more vicious with each syllable. "She warned me about marrying beneath my standards. She told me I was settling." Something cold settled in Andrew's chest. He'd heard these complaints before, but tonight felt different. Tonight, there was a finality in her tone that made his hands tremble slightly. "What are you saying, Evelyn?" The restaurant seemed to hold its breath. Even the rain outside seemed to pause, waiting for what came next. She looked at him eyeball to eyeball, her eyes blazing with a cruelty he'd never seen before. The woman he'd married, the one who used to laugh at his jokes and fall asleep on his chest while they watched movies, was gone. In her place stood a stranger consumed by bitterness and regret. "I'm saying I made a mistake, a huge, life-altering mistake." Her voice dropped to a whisper that somehow felt more devastating than her earlier shouting. "I regret not marrying my ex. Ryan would never have hesitated to give me what I want. He's everything you're not. Successful, ambitious, generous. He knew how to treat a woman like me." The silence that followed was deafening. Andrew felt the world tilt on its axis, felt 3 years of marriage dissolve in the space between her words and his next breath. He looked at this woman who'd shared his bed, his dreams, his life, and realized she'd never truly been his at all. The silence that followed was deafening. Andrew felt the words settle in his stomach like lead, each syllable a small betrayal that added up to something devastating. Around them, conversations resumed, forks clinked against plates, but for Andrew the world had narrowed to this moment, this table, this woman who had just torn his heart from his chest. He stood slowly, his movements deliberate and controlled. He reached into his wallet, placed a $20 bill on the table and picked up his keys. "Then it's not too late," he said, his voice calm in a way that made Evelyn's eyes widen. "Let's get a divorce." And with that, Andrew Collins walked out of Rosewood Diner, leaving Evelyn alone with the check and her choices. On his drive home, he called Stephen Grant, his friend and ruthless divorce attorney. After hearing the weight in Andrew's voice, Stephen didn't hesitate. "Meet me at my office tonight," Stephen instructed. "But first, stop by your house and grab every important document you have. We'll need it." Andrew gripped the steering wheel tighter, the rain streaking across his windshield. For 3 years, he'd carried the weight of their marriage on his back. Tonight, he would carry only the truth and the papers that would free him. Evelyn Collins stared at the restaurant door long after Andrew had disappeared into the Charlotte night. The $20 bill on the table felt like an accusation, the half-eaten meals growing cold in the silence. She sat there for 10 minutes, expecting him to return with an apology, flowers, some grand gesture begging for her forgiveness. He never came back. She called a taxi, her hands shaking as she dialed Monica's number. No explanation to Andrew, no text message saying where she was going. If he wanted to act like a child, she would treat him like one. Monica Price answered on the third ring. "Evie, it's almost 10 o'clock. Andrew and I had a fight. I'm coming over." 20 minutes later, Evelyn stood on Monica's doorstep in Dilworth, her pride intact but her confidence beginning to crack. Monica opened the door wearing pajama pants and a concerned expression that deepened when she saw her friend's face. "What happened?" Evelyn pushed past Monica into the warm living room, collapsing onto the cream-colored sofa. "He wouldn't give me money for your birthday trip, so I told him I regretted not marrying Ryan." The silence stretched between them. Monica's wine glass froze halfway to her lips. "You said what?" "It's true," Evelyn said, though her voice lacked conviction. "Ryan would never make me beg for money. Remember his apartment in Uptown? The BMW? He understood what I needed." Monica poured a second glass of wine with trembling hands. Ryan Caldwell had been Evelyn's boyfriend before Andrew, a pharmaceutical sales rep who drove expensive cars and wore designer suits. He'd also cheated on Evelyn twice and disappeared for weeks without explanation. "Evie, Ryan was successful," Evelyn interrupted. "He had ambition. He didn't come home covered in sawdust talking about mortgage payments." But even as she spoke, Evelyn's mind betrayed her with memories. Andrew building her a custom bookshelf when she mentioned wanting more storage. Andrew driving across town at midnight to pick her up when her car broke down. Andrew working 16-hour days last Christmas to afford the diamond earrings she'd admired. What did Andrew say when you told him about Ryan? He said we should get divorced. Then he left me at the restaurant. Monica studied her friend's face. And you didn't call him? Didn't text to say you were coming here? Why should I? He's the one who walked out. But the hours passed, and Andrew didn't call. No texts, no voicemails, no desperate attempts to reach her. By 10:30 p.m., Evelyn's confidence was cracking like ice in spring. Her phone buzzed with a notification, and her heart leaped. But it wasn't Andrew. It was a Facebook memory, a photo from 4 years ago of her and Ryan at a company party, back when his charm still masked his selfishness. Without thinking, she opened her messages and typed, "Hey Ryan, you awake?" The response came within minutes. "Evelyn, is everything okay?" Her fingers moved across the screen. "Just thinking about old times, I'm bored. Want to catch up tomorrow?" Without hesitation, she replied, "I'd love that. How about we meet at our old spot, Magnolia House at noon, just to catch up, nothing more." Evelyn smiled for the first time since leaving the restaurant. "Perfect. See you then." She turned to Monica, who was watching with growing alarm. "Ryan wants us to hang out tomorrow. Same spot, just to catch up." "Evie, don't play with fire," Monica warned. "You're married. Andrew's a good man." "It's harmless." Evelyn waved off her concern. "If Andrew knows I'm hanging out with my ex, maybe he'll finally man up. Maybe he'll realize what he could lose." Monica shook her head. "You're playing a dangerous game." "I'm taking control of my life," Evelyn countered. "I'm tired of being taken for granted." At 11 p.m., Monica couldn't shake her growing unease. She'd watched Evelyn destroy good things before, but never something as precious as her marriage to Andrew. While Evelyn dozed on the couch, exhausted from wine and emotional turmoil, Monica made a decision that would change everything. She picked up her phone and typed a message to Andrew Collins. "Andrew, it's Monica. Please come get your wife. She's planning to meet her ex tomorrow at their old spot. If you don't stop it, old fire might rekindle, but I'm worried she's going to cross a line she can't uncross." She hit send before she could change her mind, then deleted the conversation from her phone. Some friendships required betrayal to prevent destruction. Upstairs, Evelyn slept peacefully, dreaming of validation and second chances, unaware that her best friend had just sealed her fate. Andrew Collins sat in Stephen Grant's downtown office at 11:30 p.m., the city lights of Charlotte glowing through floor-to-ceiling windows. The building was empty except for security guards, but Stephen had agreed to the late meeting after hearing the urgency in Andrew's voice. It had taken Andrew 30 minutes to swing by his home first, as Stephen instructed. He'd retrieved every critical document from the fireproof safe in his workshop. Bank statements, property records, insurance policies, and the prenuptial agreement both he and Evelyn had signed 3 years ago. Those papers now sat in a neat folder on the polished conference table between them. "Marriage is over," Andrew said simply, sliding the folder across. "I need a clean divorce." Stephen Grant was Charlotte's most ruthless family attorney, known for protecting his clients' assets with surgical precision. At 45, he'd seen every variation of marital betrayal, but Andrew's calm demeanor intrigued him. "What grounds are you filing on?" "Irreconcilable differences." Andrew's phone buzzed. Monica's message appeared on the screen. "Andrew, it's Monica. Please come get your wife. She's planning to meet her ex tomorrow at their old spot. If you don't stop it, old fire might rekindle, but I'm worried she's going to cross a line she can't uncross. I thought you should know." Andrew showed Stephen the message. The attorney's eyes lit up with professional interest. "Now we can file based on adultery," Stephen said, his pen moving across legal documents. "Much cleaner for you financially." "There's something else," Andrew said, pointing to the folder. "The prenuptial agreement." Stephen examined the document carefully. "Your wife agreed to this? These terms are ironclad. In case of adultery, she gets almost nothing." "We both agreed to it," Andrew explained. "We thought our love was so strong that neither of us would ever cheat. We wanted to protect each other from gold diggers, never thinking we'd need protection from each other." Stephen nodded, already calculating the legal strategy. Let me take it from here. The attorney reached for his phone, dialing a number from his private contacts. Jack Turner, Stephen Grant, I need surveillance work done tomorrow morning. High priority divorce case. He provided Jack with Evelyn's photo from Andrew's phone and the restaurant details. Magnolia House, noon tomorrow. Subject is meeting her ex-boyfriend. I need everything, photos, video, audio if possible. Make it courtroom ready. While Stephen handled the surveillance arrangements, Andrew felt something settle in his chest. Not relief exactly, but the calm that came with making a necessary decision. He'd spent 3 years building a life with Evelyn, and she'd chosen to tear it down with 9 cruel words. The paperwork will be ready by tomorrow, Stephen said after ending the call. If Turner gets what we need, you'll have grounds for adultery and the prenup becomes our strongest weapon. Andrew drove home through empty Charlotte streets, his truck's headlights cutting through the darkness. The house felt different without Evelyn's presence, quieter, but somehow cleaner. Her magazines weren't scattered across the coffee table. Her perfume didn't linger in the air. He walked through rooms he'd renovated with his own hands, noting every improvement he'd made for their future together. The custom kitchen cabinets, the built-in bookshelves, the refinished hardwood floors he'd spent 3 weekends perfecting. Tomorrow, while Evelyn was rediscovering old flames, he would erase every trace of her from this house. He called Caleb Rivers, a construction worker, and a friend who'd helped him on various projects over the years. Caleb answered despite the late hour, recognizing the seriousness in his voice. I need help packing some things tomorrow morning, Andrew said. I'll be there at 8 a.m., Caleb promised. Andrew hung up and walked to his home workshop. His tools hung in perfect order, each one serving a specific purpose, each one maintained with care. He'd built his reputation on attention to detail, on creating things that lasted. Now he would apply that same methodical approach to dismantling his marriage. In the morning, Jack Turner adjusted his menu at a corner table inside Magnolia House, positioning himself with a clear view of the restaurant's most romantic booth, the same corner where countless Charlotte couples had shared intimate moments over the past decade. At 52, the former police detective had learned that the best surveillance happened in plain sight. Jack spotted Evelyn immediately as she walked through the restaurant's entrance. She'd dressed for seduction, a red dress that hugged her curves perfectly, heels that made her legs look endless, makeup applied with the precision of a woman preparing for battle. She paused at the hostess stand, scanning the room until she found her target. Ryan Caldwell was already waiting at their old corner table, the same booth where they'd shared stolen lunches during their turbulent relationship 4 years earlier. At 34, Ryan maintained his pharmaceutical sales polish. Expensive navy suit, perfectly styled hair, the confident smile that had once swept Evelyn off her feet. He stood when she approached, his eyes appreciating the effort she'd made. They embraced longer than necessary, her fingers lingering on his shoulders as she pulled away. Jack's concealed camera captured every second from multiple angles. You look incredible, Ryan said, and Evelyn's smile was radiant in a way it hadn't been in months. They ordered wine with lunch, a bottle of Pinot Grigio, the same vintage they'd shared years ago. The alcohol worked quickly, loosening tongues and dissolving the barriers that marriage should have created. Remember when we snuck away to that conference in Asheville? Evelyn laughed, her hand resting on Ryan's forearm. You told your boss I was a potential client. You were the most expensive client I never closed, Ryan replied, his thumb tracing circles on her wrist. Worth every penny. Jack methodically documented their progression from friendly conversation to intimate touching. His equipment captured the exact moment Ryan's hand covered Evelyn's completely, 12:43 p.m. when she leaned close enough for her hair to brush his cheek, 1:10 p.m. when their fingers intertwined across the table, 1:17 p.m. 3 miles away, Caleb Rivers worked with military precision in Andrew's house. Every piece of clothing from Evelyn's walk-in closet disappeared into labeled boxes. Her vanity table surrendered makeup, jewelry, and expensive creams. Her side of the bathroom became a collection of empty shelves. Andrew supervised with the same attention to detail he brought to his carpentry projects. Everything clean, everything complete, he instructed. I don't want a single trace left behind. By noon, he moved to her car. Andrew retrieved the spare set of keys he'd always kept on his workshop pegboard. Checking the registration, safely in his name, he handed the keys to Caleb. "Park it in your garage. I'll decide what to do with it later." Back at Magnolia House, the afternoon wine had transported Evelyn and Ryan into dangerous territory. Their conversation shifted from nostalgia to possibility, from remember when to what if. "I've thought about you," Ryan admitted, his voice low and intimate. "About us. About what went wrong." Evelyn's heart raced. This was validation, appreciation, the admiration she craved, but no longer received at home. "I think about it too. We were good together," Ryan continued, his hand moving to cup her cheek. "We could be good again." They kissed passionately at exactly 1:20 p.m. Jack's professional equipment captured it from 3 different angles. The gentle beginning, the passionate deepening, the moment Evelyn's wedding ring caught the restaurant's soft lighting as her hands tangled in Ryan's hair. Other diners turned to stare at the passionate display, some smiling at what they assumed was young love, others uncomfortable with the public intimacy. None of them noticed the man at the corner table methodically photographing the end of a marriage. Jack's phone buzzed with a text from Andrew. "Status update?" He responded with a single high-resolution photo. Evelyn and Ryan locked in their passionate embrace, her wedding ring prominently displayed, the timestamp clearly visible in the corner. Andrew's reply came within seconds. "Send everything immediately." At exactly 1:30 p.m., while Evelyn was still lost in Ryan's arms, Stephen Grant received a digital package containing 63 photographs and 15 minutes of video footage. The timestamps were precise, the angles professional, the evidence devastating. By 2 p.m., the documentation was integrated into divorce papers that would leave Evelyn with nothing but regret, and a harsh lesson about the difference between love and lust. The trap had sprung perfectly, and Evelyn Collins remained blissfully unaware that her marriage was already over. At 6:30 p.m., Ryan Caldwell's BMW pulled into Andrew's driveway. Evelyn sat in the passenger seat, her cheeks flushed from wine and the intoxicating rush of feeling desired again. The afternoon had been everything she'd remembered. Passionate kisses, whispered promises, and the heady validation of being wanted. "You sure about this?" Ryan asked, his hand squeezing hers. "Your husband might not react well to seeing me." Evelyn's smile was confident, almost predatory. "That's exactly what I want. He needs to see that I have options, that I won't be taken for granted anymore." She stepped out of the BMW with theatrical grace, her red dress a bold statement against the suburban driveway. Ryan followed reluctantly, sensing they were walking into something more complicated than a simple marital argument. The front door opened before Evelyn could use her key. Andrew stood in the doorway, but something was fundamentally wrong with the picture. He wasn't angry. He wasn't hurt. He was calm, composed, wearing a fresh button-down shirt and dark jeans like he'd dressed for an important appointment. Behind him, the living room looked different, cleaner, emptier, somehow purged. "Evelyn," he said simply, stepping aside with practiced courtesy. "Come in." She walked past him, expecting confrontation, demands, the jealous rage that would prove she still mattered. Instead, she found her world systematically dismantled. 4 large suitcases and several boxes sat lined against the wall like soldiers awaiting deployment. Her jewelry box rested on one. Her photo albums were stacked beside another. Every trace of her 3-year presence in this house had been surgically removed and packaged for departure. "What is this?" she whispered, her voice cracking with the first tremor of real fear. That's when she noticed the man in the expensive suit sitting at their dining room table. Stephen Grant looked like money and power personified, silver hair perfectly styled, tie knotted with precision, legal documents spread before him like cards in a deadly poker game. "Mrs. Collins," Stephen said, rising with practiced courtesy, "I'm Stephen Grant, your husband's attorney." The words hit Evelyn like Arctic water. Attorney, legal documents, suitcases. The afternoon's romantic haze evaporated instantly, replaced by sharp, terrible clarity that cut through her wine-softened confidence. Andrew moved to the table with deliberate precision. "Sit down, Evelyn. You too, Ryan. Since you chose to come here, you'll hear this." Evelyn sank into the chair opposite Stephen, her legs suddenly unsteady. Ryan lingered awkwardly near the door, confusion etched on his face. He finally understood this wasn't a jealous husband's tantrum. It was something calculated, merciless, and far bigger than he imagined. Stephen slid an envelope across the polished wood surface with theatrical timing. "Divorce papers. Filed this afternoon after we secured sufficient evidence." Evelyn's hands trembled as she opened the envelope. Page after page of legal terminology, property divisions, asset allocations. Her eyes raced over the words, searching desperately for something, anything, that would protect her interests. Instead, she found complete financial devastation. "I get nothing?" Her voice was barely a whisper, the question hanging in the air like an accusation. "The house, the cars, the savings, nothing?" Stephen's expression remained professionally neutral, a mask of legal objectivity. "Everything is detailed according to the prenuptial agreement you signed before your marriage." "Prenup?" Evelyn's mind reeled, searching for memories that felt suddenly crucial. Then memory struck like lightning. Her and Andrew laughing over champagne the night they signed, dismissing the fine print as unnecessary. She'd shrugged and scribbled her name, convinced they'd never need it. I didn't think it meant anything," she whispered, horrified. "I won't accept this. I never cheat on him," she added weakly. Stephen reached for another folder with deliberate precision. "I'm afraid the prenuptial agreement doesn't require your acceptance for enforcement, and there's additional evidence to consider." He opened the folder like a magician revealing his final trick. Photographs spilled across the table like accusations made manifest. Evelyn and Ryan at Magnolia House, their hands intertwined over wine glasses, their intimate conversation captured from multiple angles. The passionate kiss at 1:20 p.m., her wedding ring glinting in the restaurant's soft lighting. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. Every stolen moment, every whispered word, every touch had been captured in high-definition detail. The timestamps were precise, the angles professional, the documentation complete. This wasn't amateur photography, this was planned, methodical, devastating evidence. "How did you—" she began, her voice failing. Ryan's shoulders sagged, shame flushing his cheeks. He realized he hadn't been Evelyn's savior this afternoon. He'd been her accomplice, and Andrew's evidence. Evelyn's knees buckled. She gripped the table for support as her carefully constructed afternoon crumbled around her like a house built on sand. The quiet carpenter she'd dismissed as weak had outmaneuvered her completely. Evelyn Collins stared at the photographs scattered across the dining room table, each image a nail in the coffin of her marriage. Her mascara ran in black streaks down her cheeks, her red dress now feeling like a costume from a play where she'd forgotten all her lines. "Andrew, I can explain," she began desperately. "No need," he replied, his voice carrying the finality of a judge delivering a verdict. "You made your choice yesterday when you said you regretted marrying me. You confirmed it today when you kissed him." Ryan Caldwell shifted uncomfortably by the door, finally understanding he'd been used as ammunition in a war he didn't know was being fought. The pharmaceutical sales rep who'd charmed his way through dozens of relationships suddenly felt very small and very exposed. "Maybe I should go," Ryan started. Andrew's eyes stayed on Evelyn, but his words cut clean. "You've heard enough, Ryan. Leave." Relieved at the dismissal, Ryan grabbed his keys and slipped out without another word. The roar of the BMW engine faded down the street like a final rejection. Andrew didn't watch him leave. His focus stayed on Evelyn. "He's not coming back," he observed with devastating calm. "Men like Ryan don't rescue women from the messes they create. They just move on to the next conquest." Evelyn's sobs filled the room, raw and desperate. "I made a mistake. One mistake. You can't throw away 3 years over one afternoon." Stephen Grant gathered his documents with clinical efficiency. Mrs. Collins, according to the evidence, you've been emotionally withdrawing from your marriage for months. The photographs from today simply provide legal grounds for what was already inevitable. Andrew stood, his presence suddenly commanding in a way Evelyn had never recognized. For 3 years, she'd seen him as the man who fixed her problems and paid her bills. Now she saw the intelligence behind his quiet demeanor, the strategic thinking she'd mistaken for passivity. You said Ryan was everything I'm not, Andrew said, his voice steady as bedrock. You were right. He's unreliable. He's selfish. He runs when things get difficult. And I am none of those things. He walked to the mantel and picked up their wedding photograph, the only trace of her he'd left untouched. In the picture, they looked happy, hopeful, ready to build a life together. That couple felt like strangers now. You also said you regretted not marrying him, Andrew continued. Well, now you're free to correct that mistake. Evelyn lunged forward, grabbing his arm with desperate fingers. I didn't mean it. I was angry about money, about feeling ignored. I wanted you to fight for me. Andrew looked down at her hand on his sleeve, then gently but firmly removed it. Fighting for someone means building together. What you wanted was theater, jealousy, begging, proof of love in tantrums and tears. That's not who I am. He set the wedding photograph face down on the table with ceremonial finality. I don't chase. I don't plead. When something I've built breaks beyond repair, I don't waste time trying to glue it back together. I start fresh, with better materials. Stephen closed his briefcase with a decisive click and moved toward the door. The paperwork is complete. She'll be legally served tomorrow. Tonight is simply disclosure. Andrew nodded once, then walked to the front door and opened it wide. The evening air carried the scent of autumn leaves and new beginnings, the promise of a future without betrayal. I'm going out now, he said, his voice carrying the quiet authority of a man who'd reclaimed his power. When I come back, I don't want to see you here. Evelyn stared at him through her tears, finally seeing the man she'd married and destroyed. Where will I go? Andrew picked up his jacket and keys, his movements final and purposeful. That's no longer my problem to solve. The door closed behind him with quiet finality, leaving Evelyn alone with her suitcases, her shame, and a truth she could no longer escape. She had lost everything. What would you have done if you were Andrew? Comment below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more interesting and true-to-life stories.